Oh, wow. I wonder if they won the ban of horse carriages. I said. Let's see, long weekend kind of stuff, I didn't kind of really. Last year, we went 2 week vacation. That's one of the second one.
Do I need to read it yet?
I was just surprised, like that was an issue I was calling.
Do I need to read it, brother?
We're talking about. This year was kind of, and our daughter just moved.
You know the person? All right. Name doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, doing a national one.
They were grant from DEQ. They're the reusable grocery bags that you saw on our Facebook yesterday. You picture of Tammy holding a bag, that's the bag.
Nice.
Scott sent all of you.
Plan, we're thinking more, fall.
I will use it.
Where's she? He's up at he's still a student. He's a senior, so. We do vacations together, narrowing.
That's what our one last year was. Okay, yeah, I wanted to see what the committee was saying about that. So. Yeah.
So they promise here that Europe, he has a reservation for us. Great. You know the experience.
Right. Oh, no, well,
Yeah.
I thought I was going to the grad school.
Yeah.
You don't have. This work is just got to. It's work.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July 18th, 2024 edition of the Lexington City Council. Grateful that you all are here. Before I call the meeting to order, would like to invite folks, if you intend to speak at citizens' remarks, we have a sign-up sheet over here, and also for any of the public hearings, invite you to sign up so we can recognize you at that time. When we do get to the time of present citizens' remarks, I do ask that folks come and stand at the podium. And for the record, please state your name and if you are a resident of Lexington, Virginia. If you want to be contacted after the meeting, please provide your contact information to the clerk, Janie Hostetter. We ask that you make your comments to the council as a whole. We ask that you be brief, state your position, and provide facts. We ask that you provide any written statements or supporting materials to the clerk for distribution to the council and the city manager. Debate is prohibited. It's a time for you to share with us your ideas, and council does not respond. We ask that you speak clearly, as we want to hear what you have to say. And in general, we limit individuals to 3 minutes and groups or businesses to 5 minutes. And I remind us all that the meetings of the Lexington City Council are formal proceedings and are recorded. And with that, I would like to call the meeting to order. And the first item, if you all will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. And ask council, are there any objections to approving the agenda as presented? Hearing none, it is approved. Next, in our next item are presentations, and a presentation on updates at the Maury Service Authority. Jordan Combs, the Executive Director. Jordan, thanks for being with us, and come on down. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. The main point for today to be able to come up and talk talk to you all was just to give an update and a brief with some of the incidents that happened on June 4th with the hypo spill at the water treatment plant. Obviously, I'd sent some information over to Tom in a letter. Also wanted to be able to talk about some gratitude that we had, especially with the city Department of Public Works during that incident. Obviously, I think everybody's seen the newspaper article most recently there, so there are some of those details in that. But I wanted to give this time to kind of brief the city, kind of what happened there, kind of what we're doing and what we're going and how we're moving forward with some of that, both short term and long term. And I also want to make sure that I do give our gratitude to the significant help that we received from Patrick Madigan, his staff, including Scott Dameron and Thomas Wagner, of course, then Jerome Rose and his team for everything they did. They were very intricate and very instrumental in the success of being able to mitigate some of the instances that happened and helping us through it. They did things, not only showed up anything we asked for, but they also, from time to time over the course of June 4th through the June 6th, would just show up at any point and help us out. Even if it was anything that they couldn't do, they would go and get drinks and things for the guys and bring them food while we were working through this. So I did want to make sure that I started off with that gratitude for the DPW staff. So I think, as many of you know, on June 4th, the Moore Service Authority, we use sodium hypochlorite for the disinfection of the water before it's distributed out into the system. And one of the things that happened is we actually have typically around a 1,400 gallon is what's delivered to the water treatment plant. What we have is a outside system where the trucks hook up and deliver. Actually, the storage tanks are located up on the 3rd floor of the water treatment plant. But the truck loading area is actually outside on the back loading dock. It comes in on a tanker truck. It's typically how we have it delivered in a bulk load. Our total storage is about 2,700 gallons is what the total storage is. But obviously, we don't ever drain down all the way or fill all the way up. The incidences that happen on that is we had the delivery. Typically, the way we handle that is we have the delivery truck driver. Typically, they've been very same drivers that we have coming is typically what we have. Then they come in, they load it up. We have some instruments on the SCADA screen that show what the levels of those tanks are. And during this time period, 2 things seemed to happen that caused some of this issue. Well, there was multiple, but 2 that kind of led to this. One of them was, it seemed that we obviously had the delivery truck was actually uploaded very quickly, quicker than what we usually have, which may have caused some issues with some of the pressure and how fast we were getting it. Also, in the delivery, we had more than the 1,400 gallons that we typically had. Goes up, and one of the things that happened is the instrument seemed to have frozen. There was the time when the operator that was on duty was watching it. One of the tanks had gotten full, but the other 2 stopped, only showed about 40% full. So as he was doing his other duties and monitoring the delivery, got to the point, he said, I wonder if something's going on. Well, about that time we went out, and that's when we started to realize the hypo was actually spilling out. A couple of things to also be aware of is when this system was put in, there wasn't any containment. So we don't have any current containment. Today's kind of standards for this is to have some type of containment pad and or somewhere for this to go into the waste stream. So if we have like our Delpac, which was part of our coagulants located outside storage, it's got a concrete containment pad around it. If there is a leak or a spill or something in that delivery, that's there. The sodium hypochlorite on the 3rd floor does not have that. We also don't have other types of instruments that are standard today to be able to read types of pressures and things of that nature and how fast it's getting loaded. The other thing is a lot of times plants will also have things where if it does happen to overflow, it'll actually go to an area that's in the waste stream. So for us, that would go to our lagoons and drying bed. This does not. There aren't any overflows. So what ended up happening in this instance was it actually filled up the tanks. We had the issue with the instrumentations not showing us how full they were. Obviously, I think we had some inexperience in the unloading, which then it actually overflowed out the vent pipe. Where that is located is outside the backside of the building, which is over top of our sedimentation basins. I can go into as much detail of what those do, but they do what they say. They settle out what comes from the river. It also is located right in front of the influent channel going into our filters. After the water passes through the filters, it goes into the clear well, which is when the clear well has a certain amount of contact time for disinfection that then is distributed out into the system. What ended up happening in this instance is all of that chlorine or the sodium hypochlorite that came out and was the additional that overflowed came out and dumped straight into those basins and what was going into the filters. Our staff obviously realized this and were able to shut off the distribution piping or pumps to where none of that water made it out to the system. We went through a process of checking to make sure the infield tank in those areas did not have this significantly high residual chlorine. That was the case. Everything was fine and still meeting the requirements of the health department. And so we were able to isolate it in the water treatment plant. From there, we went through a process of having to essentially remove this water from the system, dechlorinate it, and then discharge it into our lagoons, and then from the lagoons into our discharge point. And so when we dechlorinate it, we have to meet Department of Environmental Quality requirements for our permit for our discharge. So we have to meet very stringent requirements there. So we were able to meet all of those requirements. One of the things that had gone on is the process and time it took. The chlorine residual was very high. In parts of the clear well was over about 100 parts per million. So that is what the health department requires is between 0.2 parts per million and 4 parts per million to be able to go out in the system. So as you can tell, that was very high. So we had to work through that. Obviously, we don't have that quantity of dechlorination tablets is what you use to dechlorinate this before it's discharged. So we had to scramble, find that. City of Lexington helped, Rockbridge County helped, PSA, and then also we had to go out and kind of find whoever had it. And Randy Hostetter, a local contractor, ended up renting us a pump to help deal with this and move the water out of the plant faster, along with able to go get some dechlor tablets that were located in Newport News to be able to get them to us faster. So as we went through this process, of course, that started around 9:30 when the delivery was on June 4th. Worked through, cleaned up the plant, dechlorinating, having to get the water out of the system. And we worked basically all through that Tuesday into Wednesday. And it was Wednesday night before we were able to bring the water plant back into operation. This in the aspect that we were moving it out into the infield storage tank, remote clear well. So we were able to move through that process, get that taken care of, and by around 3 o'clock in the morning on Thursday is when we were able to actually start moving that water out of the infill tank into the system. Where the biggest issue came in this was not necessarily, I don't think we had concerns with able to isolate at the water plant of necessarily bad water or this highly chlorinated water making it out into the system. Our concern really started to get to the point late on Wednesday was being able to make sure we had enough water into the system. So we had been at that point by not pumping out of the water treatment plant and into the infield tank. The infield tank is what supplies the water into the MSA loop system that then the city and the PSA pull off of and then distribute. And so what that meant is we started getting to the point we only had the water storage that was in the infield tank, along with whatever water storage was in the city of Lexington's tanks and the Rockbridge County PSA tanks. And so by the time we got things started back up, the infield tank was significantly low. It's 3 million gallons of water, but we only can pump down to about 12 feet due to pumping restrictions and hydraulic restrictions. So we had gotten to the point that the real risk that was starting to come to at that point, if we weren't able to get the plant started up when we did, was how much time we had left on the city's, the storage that was already inside the city system and the PSA system, and really what customers at that point would start to lose that water first. Luckily, we were able to work through with the diligence of the MSA staff, along with the city of Lexington, DPW, and amongst other people, to be able to get to the point we did not obviously interrupt any service to any of the customers. We did not have any violations to the VDH requirements or the DEQ discharge permit. And we were also able to continue to maintain our Gold Award standard and operations of the filtration system. So what are we doing about it? So at the short term, what we've been doing is we've obviously worked very closely with the chemicals provider. I've had some debriefs with them, working with them on understanding how their trucks actually discharge off and making sure that we have protocols in place for them not to be able to overfill it. We are stationing at this point essentially three MSA staff when we have this deliveries going forward. We just had one about 2 weeks ago, or about a week and a half ago. We're going to have them stationed on the third floor where the tanks are being delivered. Obviously, the control system where we see the levels, and then have someone at the truck with the operations, with the discharge, or excuse me, with the truck delivery, where it's being offloaded. We also have some other checklists to be able to start monitoring and collecting some data, things that that way we can be sure from truck to truck and driver to driver. Those are all some of the short term. Obviously, I think some of the long terms are things that we've been having conversations about, which really revolve around some of the updates and modernization and requirements that we need to be able to replace some of this system. Obviously, a lot of it is outdated, and also some of the equipment things that we have at the plant are in need of replacement repair. We're already working on replacing the chemical feed pumps that pump it from the storage in its system. We're also replacing a lot of the internal lines and those feed lines, and we're currently working on those projects at the moment. And then obviously, I think some of the next big steps that we have on some of the facilities improvements plan that we've discussed in the past, those revolve around having to build new chemical storage. A lot of the storage tanks that we have are already past the useful life. And so those are some of the things that are on the horizon for that long term. We're also trying to look at some other options for some temporary storage inside of our facilities, knowing that these storage tanks, even though they're not what failed, we do know we're past the end of the useful life for those tanks. So we're trying to see if we can be able to also get some temporary storage on site to be able to do some any repairs to those tanks that we need, and maybe even add some additional telemetry. So I think with that, I can open up to questions, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor, and also be able to answer any questions and go any more details that you would like.
I had a couple of questions. One was about the equipment that was doing the readings. Has any of that equipment been replaced since the incident happened?
So we did have one level indicator that we've replaced. We had to order the other two. We essentially have 3 tanks. They each have their own level indication on each one. So we replaced one and we're working on the delivery for the other 2. Part of what happened is after we'd gotten everything stopped, we actually pumped some out to get back down below the 100% full and out of the vent pipe and stored it in a separate storage tank. When we did that, the level indicators took a little bit, but they eventually came back and started to at least reading similar. But I think we had lost confidence in the fact that they had had that blip, at least on 2 of them. So we do have the 2 of them in order, and we replaced one.
Yeah, great. And then the other question was, in the renovations, do you have any plans to do a containment pond or anything like that?
Yes. So I think in general, part of when we go through the renovations, it's to get to the point that we're now doing what's typically done here. Now, whether that's a containment structure similar to what we have on the Del Pack outside, or that's a way for it to drain with some double wall containment and then be able to drain to a waste system. But that has been one of the main points of the topic, even before this happened, was to make sure when we go to do this, we have containment. That's pretty standard today.
Thanks.
And to relocate the sodium hypochlorite tanks that are inside the building to outside the building. So there's, in the case of any future problem spills that won't happen, which contributed to the problem. The fact that all this bleach, heavy concentration bleach, was inside. Another question that arises, in my mind anyway, is how many days water supply do we have if we have to isolate the water treatment, the raw water treatment plant from the distribution system? I know it varies on usage,
Yep.
but what are your estimates for how much time we have?
Yep, I think you're correct. Their demand is and usage is one of the factors that plays in that. The other one is what are the tank levels inside the system at that time? Obviously plays in that as well. One of the things that we were up against is you have the Maury Service Authority transmission main and loop with the infield tank feeding that. I think we started out with only about 25 feet in that tank. When this incident started, 25 to 26 feet in that tank out of 29, 29 and a half is full. We usually try to get it to about 29 before we leave in the evenings. The other portion of that is where are the tanks inside of the system of the distribution system, which is the City of Lexington system and the PSAs. So I don't think we have a good handle on where all those levels are. I think one of the things we had already started in working at is having dialogue and beginning discussions of what a hydraulic model looks like to help be able to answer some of those questions. But right now, from what we observed, we went about 38 hours without the water plant being able to be in operation. And then when you add in the time of not pumping out of the storage tank into the distribution system, even after we were filling the tank, we went about 42 hours or more without having that water. At that point, I don't really know how much longer after that we were going to have before customers started to lose the water, because at that point, it's whatever level the Houston Street tank is. The Grassy Ridge tank, which is actually the tank, everybody calls it the PSA tank because they are the ones that are ultimately have the responsibility for it, but it does feed the loop, and they actually pull off the loop as well into their North Lexington tanks that they pull out. So at that moment, we were lower than normal operating levels and that 42-hour mark, and the Grassy Ridge tank that feeds the loop system the infield tank feeds a loop system, but the Grassy Ridge tank floats the system. It sits at a higher elevation. And so our pumps will turn on, fill up that Grassy Ridge tank, and then it'll drain down a certain point. And then we turn on and pull out of the infield and fill that back up. That was already down below alarm levels that we usually have that would normally tell us, hey, you got something going on with the infield pumps. Not alarm levels saying that you don't have enough water. It's alarm levels going, hey, your pumps didn't kick on when they were supposed to. So we were already down at that point. So if I had to guess, depending on the time of year, things of that nature, I think we're in the two-day range, probably max before we would start to see water loss. The other thing we don't really have a good feel for as the wholesaler is who in the system, both the PSA and the city what customers and what areas and what zones, hydraulic zones would start to lose pressure first. It's not necessarily run out of the last drop of water. It's losing pressure is really where the conversation is. And we have to be able to stay above 20 PSI in the main lines before there has to be a boil water notice. So there's a lot of those health department regulations that we would have to get taken into account. And one of the dialogues hasn't made it to the board level, and I don't think any of the other council or any other prospective boards of them yet, but one that we have started is some hydraulic modeling. The MSA has started some, but we're going to have to take this to the point where we can start to integrate it to be able to answer some of those questions.
Also, the storage of water on the infield, in the infield water tank, you had mentioned that there's a 12-foot elevation problem with that. It's a 29-foot tank, doesn't generally run full. And the modification that was done when the loop was installed actually shorted that water supply by raising the elevation of the discharge pipe to 12 feet. So instead of 29, it's really from 12 to 29. That's the only amount that's really usable in that tank. So 12 over 29 is, I don't know, getting close to a half. It's somewhere in there. So here you got a $3 million, $3 million gallon tank, of which only half of it is useful in there, even though the other half has got water in it. It's not useful because there's no suction to pull that water out to go through the pumps. It's a curious arrangement. And that was done with new engineering.
Hey,
Back when the
Jordan.
loop system was installed. So are we, just, and this is a question for clarification for everybody, are we looking at doing anything to increasing our storage in the system overall?
I don't think that's any in the current plans, as far as the facilities improvements plan at the moment. I think that's where the hydraulic, in particular, if we can have that be, reach into our customers and have kind of a regional hydraulic model type of scenario, that would help us be able to answer what the storage is and what those needs are. I think it also starts to answer water age, water quality throughout the whole system. But I think it has to be done in the context of a whole system. So I don't think it's on the docket for adding any storage at the moment. I think the next steps would be, we got to understand what the current scenarios are, and then what those needs would be based out of that hydraulic modeling. And I don't think we currently don't have that hydraulic modeling on a pathway yet either. So I need to make that clear.
Right, the city, a couple years ago, several years ago, contracted and a hydraulic model was prepared for the city system,
That's right.
but there was never one done for the overall MSA system. And so that's certainly on the docket to be done
That's right.
at some point. And the MSA board has been discussing that aspect as well, just to know what your system is capable of
That's right.
in there. And that's the problem. So we have some question marks that need to be answered in there.
Mr. Ziegler. Jordan, thanks for being here tonight. Earlier you said, thanks to Lexington Department of Public Works, but thanks to you, thanks to your staff, the article that Joseph covered, and so that all the public was informed. Joseph's article said that Josh 4 or 4A, four put in 38 hours over the course of 2 days. He's on your staff. Thanks to everyone. And then the rest of your staff was putting in 15 to 20-hour days over the next week to solve this. 2 quick questions. You can be brief because I'm not an engineer and I can't understand too much technical, but was an insurance claim a part of this? Was there anything where, these significant costs that you borne, or is there any way to recapture that? And then just second, was there any consideration to alert the PSA and the city to say, please conserve water? Because here your staff and people were working night and day, literally, and we were all just going about our life, not knowing that you were dealing with this. And I have a feeling that if a notice were to be put out to please conserve, no emergency yet, conserve.
Mhm.
The not knowing if we have 2 days of water, 3 days of water, we could have bought some time just because I know that probably everyone in this room, had they known what your team was going through, they would have said, the least I can do is take a 2-minute shower, then a 10-minute shower, and just do our part. So I would encourage you to, if this ever happens again, to give us a heads up and we'll just do our part of conserving water. But really with the insurance, because I can just, this was an unexpected cost, wondering if there was anything there.
So we have reached out to our insurance provider, obviously talking to them about some of the potential equipment failures that potentially led to some of this. So we are talking through that. We've also, there was some of the dechlorination tablets and things of that nature donated by the chemical company that was being delivered. So they did provide around 50 to 60 buckets of the dechlorination tablets. Obviously, we're talking to them about other ways of potential cost sharing with that. So those 2 things are on a path. I don't know if it's going to lead to insurance, approving that, but we are moving it down that path. And I think to speak to the boil water notice, or excuse me, the conserved water notice and things of that nature. Obviously, one of the things that I've already started dialogues with Patrick, and then also mentioned Tom, and we're going to be spending some time on it, is I think we've gone through some disaster management training. A lot of that training came to bear. My staff and I had gone to, along with Patrick was there, and I think Thomas Wagner as well. So we were all there at some of that. A lot of that came to bear. A lot of that was helpful. Our emergency response plan that we had. What we found in some of this is obviously when you go through it real life, you start to find some holes. So one of the things that we're trying to work towards is I want to be able to sit down and kind of coordinate and correlate some of those disaster management hazard mitigation plans that we have and disaster management training, work that with the city. Because I think one of the things that I realized probably pretty late on Wednesday was just as you mentioned, we would have been able to have a process in place to get this out to the public and have a conserved water and a scenario in place that might have been helpful during that situation. With that being said, the city of Lexington and Rockbridge County PSA talked to some of their larger customers and was able to work with them not to water fields, not to do things of that nature that took a bigger draw than necessarily the typical household user were. So there was some of that went on. But I think from a larger perspective, yes, that is one of the things on our list to make sure we kind of put some of that in place.
Well, thanks, Jordan, for your transparency and for being here tonight.
Or is the company that, it sounds like you said the company that did the filling of the tanks may have overfilled. Are they working with you all at all to try to deal with some of the the cost, the extra costs?
Yes, they are. They donated quite a bit of the dechlorination chemicals tablets that we have. And then we also are talking to them about some other scenarios and things that we can put in place to help mitigate this from going further. So they have, we've obviously talking to them about potentially covering more of the cost, but we're working with them on that, but they've already done some of that.
Or maybe a reduction in future, cost.
Any other questions from council? Jordan, greatly appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
It also, I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned it in your presentation, but very fortunate that VMI and Washington Lee were both on summer break when this occurred. Otherwise, the timing and the squeeze could have been considerably different. Can you just share currently, if there is something going on like that, when that happened, how is the notification process? You notify MSA, I'm sorry, notify the city of Lexington,
we were,
PSA?
yeah, we were in obviously very close coordination with Patrick and their staff, and then Melissa with the PSA. But I think part of getting in that better communication, I think, is getting it a little broader, maybe even roping in the county. And then obviously with city manager sitting in the seat, being able to bring in the overall city council in some of those and working through. Obviously, there's some things that happen on the staff, but then when it gets to that point, don't want to get to a point we have a notice of something like that in that nature, and people sit on this council seats, and then obviously other board or supervisor seats, and feel that they get caught off guard, and then being able to help get that information out to them that way. So at the moment, there isn't a set protocol for it. What we've done is typically just worked with DPW, the public works side, and then the PSA. But I think that was one of our realizations that, hey, this started to get close to the point it needed to probably be a little more information out a little bit sooner.
One of the tools within our community certainly is the Rockbridge Alert that the city uses, as well as the county. So coordinating with them and being able to distribute that information out to folks. As David mentioned, circumstance of conservation of water, which I'm sure everyone's doing already anyway, especially with the lack of rain. But having those processes in place through your emergency management drills that you're going through makes a great deal of sense. So thank you for being with us this evening, and thanks for keeping the water flowing, your team keeping it flowing and clean.
Thank you.
Come back and visit us anytime.
Yes, sir.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, and the first is a request from Rihanna Schleif, right? Yes, thank you. To allow a daycare center. Arnie.
Good evening again. We do have a request for a daycare center, which is a conditional use permit in the R1 zoning district. This is for the Grace Episcopal Church at 123 West Washington Street. As you see on the location map on the bottom of page 5 of your packet, almost the entire church property is surrounded by Washington and Lee property. And I really don't expect this to have much of an impact on surrounding properties, certainly not in a negative sense. On the next page, you see in a photograph there, and if those of you familiar, you would travel down that little driveway, do the drop off in the left-hand door, and then sort of make your way around behind that building and come out on the driveway on the right-hand side. So this is a request for a preschool or daycare program for 3 to 6 year olds. They would like to operate basically from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday and enroll not more than 13 children, and will have 2 adult staff. We provide on the bottom of page 6 the applicable zoning sections, which again, this is R1, so just the general residential district standards, not standards, but the explanation of what that is. On the next page, the daycare center, and as for all of your conditional use permits, we provided you the conditions for issuance of a conditional use permit. So in C1A through D, and also a little bit there in number 3, and for what it's worth in italics, I've provided you with my opinion on how those things are addressed by this particular daycare center. On the next page, staff recommendations, staff did come up with 4 conditions. As you know, conditional use permit may or may not, or conditional use may or may not be appropriate given conditions. In this case, they are proposing to limit themselves to only 13 students, ages 3 to 6 at any one time. So that was included in the first condition, and I'll read those in the record. The proposed daycare center shall be occupied and used by a maximum of 13 students, ages 3 to 6 at any one time. However, in no case shall the number of students be allowed to exceed the maximum occupancy or limits established by all applicable state and local building codes. No questions. Number 2, the daycare center shall operate primarily between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. with only occasional activities outside of those hours.
I did have a question about that. It looks like their drop off, or I mean, their pickup ends at 3:15, and then their drop off ends at 8:40. Would it need to be extended? Would it should be 8:40 to 3:15 to include pickup and drop off?
You can certainly do that in your motion to approve, presumably if you wanted to extend that. We just didn't pick that up because primarily between those hours, but if you wanted to include the drop off and pick up into that hours, you can certainly make a motion with an amendment to that particular condition if you see that that's fit.
Okay, thank you.
Number 3, the building will at all times be used in full conformance with the current adopted Virginia Unified Statewide Building Code and the current adopted Virginia Statewide Fire Protection Code. Number 4, no change in the design or use of the building shall be undertaken unless such change is in full compliance with the above referenced building and fire codes. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on the 13th of June, and they made a unanimous recommendation in favor. And the only follow-up or comment that, 2 things. One is just the observation that there are only 13 children. And if I'm understanding it correctly, when the previous daycare center was there, they had many more than 13 children. So there has already been a daycare center in this building, operating apparently for quite a number of years before it went over to its current location. And we did have one comment, sometimes I forget to mention to you the comments that we received. This was in writing, and on page 23, Rector Bauerfein did submit some written comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have any questions for Mr. Glazer? Arnie, thank you. And with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone, I didn't see anyone sign up, but is there anyone who would like to speak to this issue regarding the daycare at Grace Episcopal Church? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:38 and ask for council's discussion and consideration.
Well, Nick brought up the point about hours. It did say primarily. I don't know if the operator would like enough leeway to make it 8 to 4, or if that matters, or if it's sufficient at 9 to 3.
I think it doesn't hurt to just expand it a little bit, just to, At least,
And if you could use a microphone, because I can't hear you.
I think it doesn't hurt to at least expand it a little bit. I think in there, let's see this letter right here. It looks like it says 8:40 to 3:15. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to doing a little more leeway, 8:30 to 3:30 or something like that, or as Councilwoman Strawn said, 8 to 4. But I think we should include pickup and drop off within the window. But other than that, I think it's fine.
Okay, then I'll move to approve conditional use permit number CUP 2024-03 for a daycare center at 123 West Washington Street as proposed by the applicant with the staff recommended conditions, with the exception of number 2 on the conditions to change the hours to between, we'll say 8 and 4 p.m.
Second.
Before we vote, just to clarify, their website says they'll be dropped off at this location and then they will leave and go somewhere else within 20 minutes of downtown every day. And then their application also said there'll be an unlicensed daycare center. Is that right?
Their license is religiously exempt, but you still have to be
You
licensed.
still have
and
to be
they-
licensed even though you're religious.
Right,
Okay,
and she said
thanks
she
for that
started the paper, she's
clarification.
doing the paperwork with.
And then, I mean, just from my experience of 10 years of drop off and pickup of little kids, I hope that they will use that excellent route that they have, because I think we know that even though there's only potentially 13 students, that's a very congested area. And there's actually a lot less parking there now than previously when a preschool was there, that WNL in the city, there's no more parking along the one side of Washington Street that used to be there. So I hope they will use that excellent U-shaped drop off that they have, but it's in line with our comp plan. So I just thrilled that a business owner wants to put this forward in Lexington because it's needed.
Any other questions or comments? I have a motion and a second. I'd ask for a roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Betts,
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
I am
But-
happy to hear that we have another daycare opportunity in Lexington, much needed. Thank you.
Yes, Rihanna, good luck with the 13. I hope it's oversubscribed and a waiting list, and excited for the care that you'll provide children in our community. So thank you. Best wishes. Next item on the agenda is 6.2, public hearing for consideration of request from Randall Trout. Arnie, take it away.
We do have a request for a boundary line adjustment for the properties located at 222 Catalpa Place and also at 438 Lime Kiln Road. Ask you to flip over to page 25, the location map. We have family members that own both of these properties. I believe the rental is at 222 Catalpa Place, and at some point, I think they would like to have the flexibility of perhaps selling that. Before that happens, they would like to take some of the rear yard from the Catalpa Street property, which is very deep, and add it to the backyard of the property at 438 Lime Kiln. And if you look over onto the boundary line adjustment that was provided by Randy Trout and Kate in our office hatched over that area that's in question. So again, that area that is hatched in question would transfer from the Catalpa Street property over to the property that's on Lime Kiln Road. Randy did keep it so that it meets the lot requirements. So the Catalpa Street property is getting smaller, but it still meets the 15,000 square foot minimum lot size for properties in that zoning district. Staff doesn't make a recommendation for approval, and Planning Commission held a public hearing on the 13th of June and unanimously also recommends approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Arnie. Regarding this issue, I'd like to open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak to this topic to please come forward. No one signed up, but that's okay. Seeing no one wishing to speak to this item, I will close the public hearing at 7:43 and ask for council's consideration.
I move to approve preliminary subdivision application PS 2024-02 for the adjustment of boundary lines between 438 Lime Kiln Road and 222 Catalpa Place in accordance with the boundary line adjustment survey completed by Troutland Surveying.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, before a roll call vote, thrilled to see when family members can work together and get along.
Congratulations, sisters. Roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler. Aye. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander. A motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much, and we'll see who gets to mow the grass. Okay. That part you get to settle amongst yourselves. Next public hearing, 6.3, consideration request to amend the future land use and map to change the future land use. Arnie.
This is an item to address a mapping area. We had 8 parcels that are contain single-family residences along Maple Lane, and they are currently included in the future land use designation of a commercial center and also designated as an opportunity area. Those 8 parcels are listed at the top there. I'm not going to read all of those in the record. You will notice on page 35 of the location map, which is also a zoning map. So it's those 8 parcels on Maple Lane. If you turn off of South Main Street onto Maple Lane, it's the last 8 on the right-hand side. And they're all currently zoned R1 and all have single-family detached residences on them. You'll notice there's also an intervening lot behind them before we get to the commercial uses along South Main Street, which would be the fire department over to Dr. Lobb's office. The next page, on page 36, we've outlined those 8 parcels, but you will notice with the hatching that these properties are in the opportunity area, and also with the red colored future land use designation that they are in a commercial center. That is important because of what is allowed in an opportunity area. So if somebody were to come in and ask for a rezoning, you're all well aware that we look in or towards our comprehensive plan to see what is allowed in that particular area. We would make our zoning decision based on what the comp plan directs us. So an opportunity area, just quickly, states that it's for new development, infill, and redevelopment are expected to be focused within opportunity areas. Each opportunity area is unique and must be considered in light of the underlying pattern, area, and surrounding uses. For example, the suburban style commercial areas, which is the area that we're talking about, offer opportunities to increase density through redevelopment or infill out parcel development, and then it talks about McLaughlin Street. Similar to that, commercial centers are a lower density element along Lexington's commercial economy, found along East Nelson. These and South Main, these areas lack the historic significance of a tourist area. And then it goes on, uses include grocery, pharmacy, general retail, fueling. The point that I'm trying to make is those are the things that are allowed in a commercial center. And I don't think that would be appropriate on that portion of Maple Lane. So the staff is recommending that we amend the future land use map to take those 8 parcels out of the commercial center designation and also out of the opportunity area designation. So that was what has been advertised for both the planning commission public hearing that was held, and they do unanimously recommend approval of that. And then in addition to their recommendation, staff also makes a recommendation, but the thing that I would like to add is during the planning commission public hearing, we've heard from a number of neighbors. They are in support of this, but they're also going to ask for additional request, which is the area that is between the 8 parcels and the backside of the firehouse, the backside of the funeral home, and the backside of Dr. Lobb's property. You see a parcel in the middle of that block, and also you see the tail ends of 2 residential parcels that face out onto South Main Street. They're going to ask you, certain of it, they're going to ask you to also have us reconsider whether or not that should be taken out of the commercial center in the future land use designation. What we've advertised for you is only those 8 parcels. So that's the only approval that you can make this evening. But if you see fit for us to do more investigation or to go ahead and advertise for additional parcels to be taken out of the commercial center or out of the opportunity area, we're happy to do that. But just like to emphasize that only the 8 parcels in question have been advertised for this particular public hearing. Happy to answer any questions.
How long have these parcels been in the commercial center or opportunity area designation?
Presumably since the 2020 update to the comp plan.
Okay, so about 4 years approximately.
And that brings up why we noticed it when we were doing the plan development mixed use text amendment. is when we noticed it because the plant PDMU is really in the C2 zoning areas, which is this area of town and also out East Nelson Street. So that's when it was noticed that this is perhaps a mapping area that needs to be addressed, and that's why we're before you this evening.
Arnie, well, you're gonna have to remind me, can something be in an opportunity area? It can be in an opportunity area, but be residential, right? It doesn't have to, we didn't keep all of our opportunity areas in the C2, did we?
No, we have more opportunity areas than just the two. I think we have 5, and I can look that up in the comprehensive plan, but we definitely have more opportunity areas than just the two out the two C2 zoning districts, if that's the question.
Yes.
Yes.
And also, so if we say just that large parcel, vacant parcel, if we kept it, we could keep it, it's gonna stay R1 regardless.
That's
But on the future land use map, if we show it as residential, but opportunity area, we could do that as well.
I believe so, yes.
Because as it with it being R1 right now, I mean, no matter what, if they want to do something to it, it has to go through zoning, but really nothing can happen to that piece of property because we don't allow construction on a landlocked piece of property. You can't build houses on it. So it's
That is very true. And I'd like to emphasize that we're not talking about zoning this evening because the
Right.
zoning district stays. That's why I provide you with the zoning map. But yes, that is a landlocked piece of property. How is it best used? I guess it would be your question in the future, if you want to change the designation or not. I think it probably has a little bit more use if the commercial properties were redeveloped, and it just makes the commercial properties a little bit bigger. Otherwise, it's a residential piece that's stuck in the middle that may not have much use because it's hard to get to, and then how you divide it up other than keeping it as one parcel. So there might be one house in the middle of that block and maybe that's it.
okay.
Arnie, the reason for this consideration just is for those 8 parcels. Is it because those are the residents who approached you, or?
No, we sort of noticed this on our own through, again, the zoning text amendment for plan development mixed use. And we really didn't notify the residents until we put the sign out on the property. And then they started asking me questions. And I had to explain to them what a future land use map is and certain designations. And so they weren't notified and they didn't request this, but we are actually trying to protect their current use, which is the single family use.
Yeah, my recollection is when we were going through a zoning amendment, we were looking at the maps, and I mean, I remember
You
as a
pointed it
kid
out.
growing up here, I looked at it and said, wait a minute, those are all homes. That shouldn't be changed to commercial. I think we moved the line too far, and staff said, yeah, we made an error. We just moved the line too far. So all of this are residents, homes on Maple Lane. And it was just, if you will, an error as we were looking at a lot of things. It got passed or dealt with. So this is really fixing that error, not changing anything per se, but correcting an error.
I'm glad we noticed it instead of the residents noticing it. We have to be reactive.
Yeah. Arnie, a hypothetical, which is always dangerous. You indicate you've got the 2 lots on Main Street that are part of the opportunity area, that are part of the residential opportunity area. If the owners of one of those lots on Main Street acquired the larger lot, that could open up and make for a PUD or some other type of development, theoretically.
And if the minimum lot sizes are met for that PUD.
But it would open up the property for development.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And then there's also access from the driveway that goes up, and I cannot think of the automobile
Yeah.
repair
Repair shop.
shop that runs up beside Dr. Lobb's property. And perhaps the interesting thing, as you're alluding to, is one of the 2 houses that is facing on the South Main Street that has the really deep yard where we cut the backyard and made part of it the opportunity area where the front yard is still in the traditional neighborhood. One of those is owned by a company who owns that middle lot that we're talking about. So that ownership already exists in your example.
Okay.
And they also own the entire hill where Kenny's is. That's all owned by one entity
Okay.
today.
Gotcha.
one other thing that I forgot, Jeremy reminded me that if you are going to go for a motion for approval, if you could also add to that motion for approval that you would adopt the resolution 2024-09. The resolution is provided in your packet, but just to be clear that it's not just adopting the map amendment, but also the resolution that I guess codifies or puts that into place.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Members of council have any other questions for Arnie? Hearing none, I'd like to open the public hearing, and first person to sign up is Carrie Gould. Carrie, if you'll please come forward. Welcome. Thanks for being with us. And Leslie Tucker, you're on deck.
And I have to thank Arnie because he said many of the things that I was going to say, but and probably more clearly. So yes, so I have talked to pretty much everybody on the street. We are all very excited that you found that mistake, and we very much support both those things, taking it off of the
Opportunity zone.
opportunity. Yes, yes. But we also very much want you, and we understand it can't be done today, but we would very much like you to look in and start investigating that lot that you were talking about, because of those things. It could change, right, at any time. And then what that lot does for those 8 houses, and I live across the street, but it still affects me. It's a buffer zone, right? Because we are surrounded. I mean, it's not like we're in the middle of, this rural area. We are basically surrounded by commercial stuff, by an apartment building, by, all around us. And the only thing that really separates us is that little backyard that goes the length of those 8 houses. And so we all would be very, very upset if there was either the commercial things that are on South Main now are moving in and taking part. It's not a very big piece of land. It's a narrow, long piece of land. And I just think with my understanding of what the setbacks are and that kind of things, you're not going to have much there. But because we already have, so many, what is it? There's the apartment building, there's all the commercial stuff. There is, on just one street over, we have the park and we have the pool and we have the school that's there. I mean, it's just filled with a lot of stuff. And those other areas that are on the map are more mixed use now and commercial, and wouldn't be as intrusive to our little street. So we, again, are really, really asking you very much to start in another investigation or the process or whatever it is that you have to do, so that we can have another one of these about that lot. And we really hope that you do pass on the 2 other things, because that would be great.
Excellent.
So thank you, unless anybody has questions.
Actually, it's a time for us to hear from you. So
Okay.
no questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Leslie Tucker, welcome.
I'm so grateful to have this comparison map, because it does show the existing zoning. It shows that empty parcel as part of the residential area. And so when there was the attempt to rezone and make a opportunity map, it went all the way to our street, and thankfully you did catch it, and we're really pleased about that. If we're going to back out of those 8 parcels and take a little bit more to protect and buffer that area, there were comments last time that we are already in a close proximity to commercial area. And if language in opportunity map allows for some other creative ways to bring that parcel in to expand a commercial operation, that really would change the character of the neighborhood. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you being with us and sharing your insights. Jerry and Kay Berry, you can come together. They covered it. Very good. Thank you all for being with us, and glad to know Maple Lane's well represented. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening regarding this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:58 and ask for council's consideration.
Arnie, I do have one more question. Have you heard from the owner of the property of that vacant lot
No.
at all? Okay.
How much land is that, is a vacant lot?
It's like 1.57 acres. If the Timmins GIS site is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is decent size.
Yeah.
That's a decent size.
Now, the question before us tonight is the recapturing Maple Lane as residential,
If that's all that we're
addressing this
discussing,
evening.
then
Yes.
yes, then that's a no-brainer, and I'll make a motion for that. And just for the residents to have some peace of mind. I mean, that is still zoned, those 3 other parcels are still zoned R1. And really, for anything to happen with them, somebody will have to have a plan, and they'll have to come back before council again. And so there can definitely be provisions made to make sure that there's some type of barrier between the neighborhood in the what anything that were to happen. We'll also say, just since if it's R1 without being an opportunity area, you wasted that piece of land, nothing can really happen on it because it's completely landlocked for the most part, unless they did take that one house and
Currently,
yeah,
yes.
you really can't do anything.
But I will say, yes, we ordinarily don't, but if you'd like to respond, I'll invite you to come back to the microphone.
I mean, there have been some discussions about whether or not the community themselves, we could buy that piece of land, and so that it would be sort of a cooperative area for all of us to use. And so, I mean, I think there are creative ways that could be useful without destroying our community.
Yeah, and you can do that now. I mean, it is, right now it is zoned R1, so that would be great if you work that out.
Thank you.
But as far as addressing the mistake, I mean, that was a mistake. And so I move to approve comprehensive plan amendment application CPA 2024-01 for the amendment of the tax map numbers 28-13-3, 28-14-13, 28-14-14, 28-14-15, 28-14-16, 28-14-17, 29-17, -18 and 28-17-19 to the traditional neighborhood future land use designation, and for the removal of these same tax parcels from the opportunity area designation, and adopt resolution 2024-09.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion regarding this issue? A roll call vote. Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Staff, thank you for correcting that. And unless there's an objection from council, we'll ask staff to look at what would be involved with removing that parcel and the merits of that to bring back at a later time to look at removing that from the opportunity zone.
Well, I believe they need us to direct them. I mean, they won't do it on their own, so we have to decide if we're going to direct them to do that.
Correct. I was asking if there's an objection to directing staff to do that. I welcome the objection.
No, I wouldn't mind keeping it in the opportunity area, but keep it,
R1.
yes.
Certainly.
Well, and still in the
All
traditional
I'm asking is for staff
residential.
to revisit, get the size to verify David's got the 1.57 acres, and have a work session or a topic for a future meeting.
Okay, so we're directing them to do that, yeah.
I'm asking for your permission to direct staff to do that.
I mean, to have a work session, I guess, to further discuss it, I don't think hurts. Yeah.
That's what our citizens have asked us to do. So I hope we would at least discuss it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. I'll take that as no objection. Staff, thank you for following. Next item on the agenda is public hearing 6.4, consideration of request from Tori and Joey Bates.
We do have a piece of property at 313 South Jefferson Street. It already has house facing Jefferson, a brand new garage structure with a little bit of living space in the back. And they would like to utilize that as a detached accessory dwelling unit. This would be our first one following the adoption of our accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And in addition to that, they also have a short-term rental currently in the main residence that they would also like to transfer back. Only mention that so that it's clear, but that would then follow all of the short-term rental rules and regulations, and they are already aware that through the changes to ADU, that any short-term rental that is in an accessory dwelling unit is limited to 45 nights. So they're aware of those additional limitations for short-term rentals in an ADU that they would not have currently in their house as their short-term rental is currently operated. On top of page 45, you see the picture of the existing structure. It is in a historic district, so it did go through the approval process for the Architectural Review Board. And going over to bottom of page 45, we did provide to you not all of the ADU standards, again, not to try to complicate the packet, but only those that are sort of applicable for this particular application. I'm going to go through these quickly. So in C4 at the bottom, there is a minimum lot requirement, and this parcel is 13,000 square feet, which is a good bit larger than the minimum of 8,000 square feet. Number 6 on the next page, the owners do reside in the principal dwelling. Number 9C in particular, where you have 2 parking spaces or more that exist prior to the issuance of accessory dwelling unit, you have to keep at least 2 of those spaces. They more than meet that because there are 3 parking spaces in front of the garage, and then obviously the 2 parking spaces that are in the garage. So that particular requirement is met. There's the little note there in the middle about the short-term rental that I've already covered. Then in E, the detached standards. And if there's a gross floor area of the primary dwelling, you can be more than 60% of that, and they are well under the 60% limit. Number 2, the height of the detached building of the ADU is 24 feet, which is less than the 25 feet that's allowed for a detached ADU. Also on number 3, this is getting into standards for buildings that were approved after the 1st of February 2024, which is when we adopted the ADU standards. And this building actually existed prior to that. So those standards are not required to be met, but sometimes we did mention that where they still meet those standards. Number 5 on the next page, I've already mentioned that it's in the historic district and it's gone through the ARB. Number 8, a non-conforming structure shall not be expanded or enlarged. They are not proposing to expand or enlarge this particular structure. B, the square footage of the proposed ADU is significantly less than that of the main building. C, all fenestration and mechanical units are set back at least 10 feet from the property line. D, entry doors to the ADU are more than 10 feet from the property line. E, the overall height of the building is 24 feet and no height is proposed to be added. F, this subsection specifically allows a non-conforming building to be converted to an ADU in contrast to the requirements of the non-conforming section. So it meets because we specifically allowed in the non-conforming section a structure to be converted to a ADU. So to have that residential use in a non-conforming structure. Next page, those are the typical or standard conditions for issuance that you always review. And again, for my 2 cents is added to each of those if needed. Staff does recommend approval with 2 conditions. The first one being that the size of the detached ADU shall not be increased unless permitted by a revised conditional use permit. They're asking only for a 324 square foot area within that structure to be utilized for the accessory dwelling unit. That's not very large, but we do have the condition there if they wanted to perhaps encroach more into the garage space that they would have to come back before you for that approval through another public hearing process. Number 2, the use of the detached ADU for short-term rentals shall be subject to both the general standards for short-term rentals in section 11.322. Those are all the use and design standards for short-term rentals, and the specific standards for short-term rentals and detached ADUs in section 11.1.1 C10. Again, that's the section in ADUs that you all went through for the adoption of ADUs specific to the short-term rental use. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this 27th of June, made a recommendation 3-1 for approval. And the one person, because this was the first one, I think her point was mainly that would have been more comfortable if the entire Planning Commission was there for that particular discussion, since it was the first one for a detached ADU, and there were only 4 members at that particular meeting. I think that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Arnie. Members council have any questions? Hearing none.
Did
yes.
we, how did we end up handling, that it has its own separate address, but it shares a water meter? Is that right? Or did we
gave them the flexibility, if I remember correctly.
Did we institute a minimum fee?
We did. There was that minimum daily usage fee. So that standard fee
Yes.
was going to be applied regardless.
Okay.
So yes.
So that's in place and
Well, I haven't confirmed,
be.
but
okay.
it should be, yes.
I guess the applicants were okay with the staff recommended conditions, particularly number 1. That wasn't a problem.
I have not heard anything
Okay.
from them to indicate that they were not.
Because really, as
satisfied
long
with
as
that.
it's below 60% of their,
True.
that,
My only thinking there, and you can delete that one if you like for that particular reason, it's well below the 60%. It's just sort of the expectation of, we're looking at a floor plan that says 324 square feet. It's a little bit different if it goes up, but as you're pointing out, it's still going to be well
Yeah.
below the 60%.
I'm fine with that. I was just wondering the reasoning for it, yeah.
It's been a little tight, perhaps. Correct? Yeah. Very good. Any other questions for Arnie? Hearing none, I'd like to open the public hearing and did not have anyone sign up, but is there anyone who would like to speak to this topic this evening? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing at 8:10 and ask for council's discussion and consideration.
I move to approve conditional use permit CUP 2024-04 with the 2 staff recommended conditions.
Second?
I have a motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Bates. Good luck. Looks nice. Is the garage area of the size to put a pickleball court in? It's all the rage these days. All right, fair enough. Oh, very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for being with us. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes. They were in your packet prior and not aware of any modifications. And unless there's an objection, we will approve those as presented. They are approved. Next item, citizens' remarks and comments. This time we look to hear from our community and it looks pretty quiet out there. Is there anyone who would like to speak to council on any other items? Hearing nothing but the dull roar of the HVAC at 8:12, we'll close the citizens' remarks and comments and move on to the consent agenda. And that's for council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
I have a motion, a second, roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And receipt of that. No unfinished business. Boards and commissions, Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
No report.
Main Street Lexington, Mr. Smith.
From the very successful Freedom Food Festival on July 3rd, 2,051 meal tickets were sold. We probably had closer to 2,500 total in attendance. We had over 1,000 kids, parents, grandparents, etc. that came out for the bike parade. Main Street Lexington Board began another fiscal year with new officers and new additional board members, them being Eddie Klauser and Melissa Wooding of Let Them Eat Cake. One quick note, the Judge's Choice Award for Best Nonprofit Organization meal was Vets First with Sweet Treats. There's going to be a sort of wrap up of Freedom Food Festival on the 30th at the Southern End. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Water Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Mr. Combs earlier presented my report tonight, and I want to go on record as saying how appreciative I am, as also a member of the MSA board, as to their work. It was stated that they worked many hours. I had heard that Mr. Combs had even worked 40 hours in one day in there. And so, but all's well that ends well, but it was dicey in there. So we look to improving some plans in our modernization to try to keep this under better control. You never know what you don't know until you don't know. And so here we are. And so we learned something from this, and we are moving forward on that. So end of report.
Thank you for that non-report. Planning Commission, Ms. Strawn.
Planning Commission met last Thursday on July 11th, and we started with our organizational meeting. We elected Shannon Spencer as the chair and John Eastwood as the vice chair. And then we continued our discussion on cottage housing. And that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
I have no report other than to say that our next meeting is going to be, it's moved to July 31st at 9 a.m. It's different than our normal meeting time. That's the only report I have on that.
At the tourism office.
At tourism office, same place.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
No report.
Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. We welcomed our new city manager, Tom Carroll, at our threshold meeting on June 26th. He said that as a person for whom affordable and workforce housing was a passion, he wanted to better understand Threshold's role and how he could help. An overview of Threshold's current and possible future activities and the comprehensive history of Threshold's successes and pitfalls were shared. And responding to discussion about Threshold's recent survey of underutilized properties, Mr. Carroll briefly recounted his experience with the use of a land bank as a tool to quiet title and repurpose vacant properties. He acknowledged his familiarity with a Maryland statute governing such entities, but suggested it could be worth researching the Virginia statute and the potential utility of land bank locally. It suggested that we consider what type of program needs should be put in place ahead of the results of the wind chill housing assessment. And his comment was followed by a discussion of how to address the issue of properties with delinquent taxes. Arnie Glazer reported that city staff and staff from PDC had reviewed the 4 proposals submitted in response to the advertised RFP. And they met the week prior and chose Summit Design and Engineering Services to conduct the survey. You might remember that Summit was the organization responsible for the Martinsville survey that we continue to refer to, which has been provided as an example of what could be expected. He said that the contract with Summit would be finalized soon and the survey results could be expected by early next year. He added that the results of the regional housing study would be available soon, hopefully this month. And per the planning grant, the city would need to hold at least one public meeting with the survey team. And Arnie Glazer confirmed that that was the case and pledged to keep Threshold updated so that the meetings could be planned accordingly. We talked about needing to fill 2 vacancies on Threshold. And we've been making pitches at recent city council meetings, but we've received no takers. Shadri Sands said that he was reluctant to look for new members at RARA, given the recent addition to its board of commissioners, Betts and Craney, but offered to reach out to his contacts at Habitat and the community table to see if they had any recommendations. A comment from Mr. Carroll led the conversation about the commissioner's name the commission's name and branding. The staff agreed to update the website to better highlight Threshold Housing role as Lexington's Housing Commission. I gave an update on meeting with Angela Penn, the new executive director of TAP in Roanoke, who is familiar with Lexington. She had been the TAP representative coming to Lexington some years ago when we had a local TAP advisory board. Ms. Penn was interested in TAP having a broader regional presence and said she was she has me putting together a list of local stakeholders to assist her in that effort. Nick Betts said that he heard that Historic Lexington Foundation was developing a new program to assist with rehabbing of existing buildings. And it was suggested that if this is the case, that we perhaps should invite HLF representatives to discuss the program at one of our future meetings. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Any questions? Mr. Betts?
Do you think we should change the name on the agenda to Lexington Housing Commission in the future, or how are we gonna rebrand it?
Oh, we discussed it.
Yeah.
But
Did we make a
vote?
decision?
I don't
I
think we
don't-
voted on it. Arnie?
Tom?
Buddy.
It's already the Threshold Housing Commission. That is the official name, and also what we send off to the state for our registration. So it's the
Lexington.
Threshold Housing Commission
So we could add Housing Commission, Threshold Housing Commission on the agenda. That wouldn't change anything.
on the agenda. I don't think it hurts anything.
Maybe to attract some, new potential members, hopefully, I don't know if I'll help or not, but.
Be hopeful.
Do you have any realtors on your board, or are there any, as we look for people to serve on that board, are there any areas of expertise you feel like you're missing?
That is an area that would be helpful. Developers would be helpful. And Threshold can actually allow somebody from the county or Buena Vista to be on it, as far as I think our bylaws indicate.
Okay.
Yeah, there isn't a residency requirement for Threshold. Of note, I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but HLF is vacating the office that they're in on Jefferson. They've been in Matt Crawford's building, and they're going to have space at the ODK office, the old train station. So not sure how that all came about, but I heard from what I deem a reliable source that that's happening.
ODK is still going to be there as well.
Correct.
Okay.
ODK is just sharing some of the space. Yes. There are no other questions. From my report, have 3 items. One, just wanted to continue to extend my personal appreciation. I'm sure the appreciation of council for Tom's energy and hitting the ground running. Positive feedback from our peers and colleagues at the different boards and commission that Tom's serving on. So thank you, and we're glad you're here. Regarding the Freedom Food Festival, the organizers, the Lexington Fire Department, the Lexington Police Department, Public Works, and Main Street Lexington, the organization that went into making that possible, and the audacity of this council to authorize a DORA or to adopt in our code to be able to have a DORA designated outside recreational area is wonderful. And there's so many positive things that have come out of the Freedom Food Festival the number of years that we've had it. So thank you all. It's a model for cooperation and community. So very excited about that. And equally as excited, Jamie Gooden's application for the IDA, and I'd like to bring his name forward for your consideration to serve currently through May 1st, 2028, a 4-year term.
I move to appoint Jamie Gooden to the IDA.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, and decided to get Jamie back in the fray on the IDA. And with that, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 4 quick updates. First, Councilman Sigler had asked for an update about Brightspeed and their progress in terms of installing fiber in Lexington. Patrick Madigan reached out, and here's the update that we heard this week. They started their installation in mid-June. To date, they have provided fiber to 600 households of the 4,300 that they will serve. Obviously, that includes more than just Lexington. Of those 600 households, 314 are available for sale right now, and the other 300 or so will be offered next week. They anticipate doing the entire city of Lexington by sometime in September. So that's another option for Lexington residents. Second, I'm pleased to share that the Lexington Police Department has received a notification of a grant from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services for a program called Operation Ceasefire. It's a $200,000 grant, and the purpose of the grant is to provide resources for us to hire an additional investigator. This would be a detective position focusing on domestic violence and sexual assault crimes in our community. The grant would provide for the pay and the benefits, as well as the uniform and equipment for the additional detective position, with the exception of not providing the vehicle. So we would have to provide that locally. This is essentially funding for 2 years of funding, with the expectation that the community would continue to provide for the detective position beyond the 2-year expiration of the grant. Bring this to your attention because right now we have a complement of 18 sworn police officers. And we would add an additional position, and we should be prepared, if we accept this grant, to take on that 19th police officer at the expiration of the grant. There's absolutely no guarantee that the grant would be continued moving forward. That said, it is not uncommon for additional funding resources to be available. So I think what we just have to do is be clear-eyed going into accepting the grant, if we do, that we may have a local ongoing additional cost in a couple of fiscal years from now. So no decision is needed right now. I plan to put together a memorandum and put this on your next meeting for any additional discussion with additional written information of what I've just described. We haven't accepted the grant. I would like to accept the grant. My recommendation is that we do. This is an important area of additional service that we could provide our community for domestic violence and sexual assault cases. But that'll be before you at your next meeting. Third, I wanted to provide, as you are aware, we have provided the temporary repairs to the lime kiln bridge, and that has been completed. Staff is working with VDOT on the permanent replacement of that bridge. I said this to the mayor earlier today, and I think all the information that I had is something that all of you are aware of. So it's new to me, but probably not new to you. But we're working with VDOT, and it looks like we will be able to replace, with all federal and state funds, the entirety of the lime kiln bridge and restore it to a 10-ton limit, with one exception. We will, during the duration of that construction, there may be a local cost for us to continue to provide a pedestrian access across Woods Creek. Wouldn't be done to VDOT standards. We would be able to do it as a local cost and as a local project at a lower level of construction. Still have to be obviously safe, but it wouldn't have to meet VDOT's significant standards. So we're exploring that. More information to be following soon, probably in September or October, but I don't think that's a budgeted fiscal cost in FY25. Fourth item is your August 15th meeting. Right now, we don't have any items on the agenda for your August 15th meeting. It has been your past practice to cancel one meeting in August, as I understand it. But I don't want to promise that, because it may be possible that we may need a meeting that evening. As you know, we're planning to remodel City Hall, probably starting in the first quarter of 2025. We may need to provide a temporary, well, we definitely need to provide temporary space for City Hall staff to work out of. It's convenient for the customers, functional for the staff, and affordable within the project budget. We may be bringing forward leases, and I'll be providing a memorandum in the near term on what we're exploring in terms of space, but don't plan to be out of town on August 15th, but you might be able to be. And I think I was mistaken. I think I have 5 items. Just to let you know that the VMI master meter agreement is in the hands of VMI. We're expecting to hear back from them within the next week, and we're still tracking to have that in front of both council as well as the Board of Visitors in the next 6 to 8 weeks. We haven't answered any questions.
For the, do we have any police vehicles that are not currently being used? Or will we have to purchase a new police vehicle if we accepted this grant?
We have 20 total police vehicles. We have 18 of them as take home. We have 1 civilian for the parking enforcement and 1 spare. The spare is already scheduled for replacement. So
Okay.
we would need a new vehicle.
And just a clarification, if we were to not meet August 15th, am I right that we will have only met twice between June 20th and September 5th? Since we canceled a meeting in July also? I mean, if we don't have anything on the agenda, I guess, but only meeting twice between June 20th and September 5th. It just seems like we're skipping a lot of meetings. But just me, just my thought, just a long time.
It has nothing to do with my matriculation as city manager.
I was gonna say, keep up the good work.
I just like to be available if something like, I don't know.
Or if we could spread out whatever would be on the agenda on September 5th, so we may not have as long of a September 5th meeting.
I like Tom's plan of let's see if we have anything for
Yes,
August.
I agree. I just want to
There's
throw it
no
out there
point.
that, I mean, we took a meeting off in July because of the holiday. And that's just, I mean.
To answer your question, we've had 2 meetings since the first 2, or
Since June 20th.
June 20th, yes. Prior to June 20th, I think we had 11 meetings scheduled. Actually, more than that, but those were our regular meetings.
Yep, sounds good. Just making the statement. I think we published our scheduled meetings back in January. So I'm always like to be very upfront with the public.
I feel compelled to ask how we're not.
We said we'd have a second meeting. It's good.
It's scheduled, David.
And I hope that we have it.
Very good. Thank you for the report. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, been working over the last couple of weeks with outside opioid counsel. You know, you've got a resolution forthcoming in the next section of the agenda, but we've been trying to see where that, what the status of the opioid claims is. Most of the claims that have been made to date have been resolved. Outside opioid counsel is looking at some other possible avenues of recovery. So even with the Kroger settlement, that may not bring the litigation to an end. There may be some additional claims down the line that may be of some benefit to the city. Obviously, we don't get the largest amounts out of these settlements, but we do get some. We have been working with Patrick and his staff on a couple of utility issues over the last few weeks, working on the Jackson Water Sewer project, working on some easements and things like that to get ready for that project. Also been drafting an ordinance which will modify the lien and disconnect policies to conform them to some changes in state law. And other than that, just handling issues on an as they come basis. We've helped Arnie with some enforcement questions and zoning questions. And I have previously told council that we were waiting on some MSA documents from John Dryden, Rockbridge County attorney. We got those earlier this week or the end of last week. I forwarded them to Tom, and he and I are going to take a look at them over the next couple of weeks. And hopefully that's something that'll make its way to you for your consideration over the next 6 to 8 weeks, kind of like Tom was mentioning for the other item. With that, happy to answer any questions you may have. And obviously, I'm happy to reschedule FOIA training whenever you would like.
Absolutely. Any questions for the attorney? Any way the MSA agreement could be ready by August 15th? so we can ensure that we have something for the agenda.
Don't want to make that promise.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I think Mr. Combs would like it to be.
Yes. Definitely, definitely. Very good. Next item on the agenda, new business, consideration of a recommendation to approve the Kroger opioid settlement. Information is in our packet, and I'll call on Jeremy for any guidance.
Yeah, just briefly, it's a settlement of the retailers. We've been settling with those. There have been settlements with CVS and Walgreens, entities like that. Kroger and their pharmacy is a retailer who has distributed opioids over the years. There's a national settlement, so this applies across the nation, states, localities, cities, counties, some towns in other states. And the pot of money for Lexington is not that grand. It's about $10,000, at least is what it appears at this moment. There is an incentive structure where the more localities that join in, that number could increase, but it is not going to increase to the point where it's going to, be a real difference maker, but it can help with some of the organizations that city council has funded previously with money it's received for opioid abatement purposes. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's $10,000 that's going to come in essentially over the next 10 years.
Very good. Thank you, sir. You heard the recommendation of the city attorney and information in your packet. I'd welcome council's consideration.
I move to approve resolution 2024-10 for the Kroger opioid settlement.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, a roll call vote. Mr. Betts. Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Resolution to declare an intent to reimburse the city for the City Hall renovation project. Call on the city manager for this item. In just a second. No, all good. Tom, anything to introduce on the consideration of a resolution to declare the reimbursement for City Hall renovation?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing really to brief you on, only to say that this is standard practice when we are spending money, which ultimately will be paid for from a tax exempt bond, and this is an IRS requirement. We've done this before. We'll do it again if you do it now on the next item as well.
Very good. A welcome council's consideration.
Oh, well, I'd like 2 questions. One question is, it looks like there's, I guess like about $1,000,006 difference between the projected cost and the maximum bond issuance. Does that number include any potential like rent, or is that going to come out of that, or is this just for the renovation? Does that make sense? Because we just talked about potentially staff needing to relocate. Is this cost only for the construction of the building, or is it
It
you know what
is
I'm
for
saying?
the construction, and we did not add in anything additional for potential FF&E or relocation costs. But within the estimate that AECOM had given us, they had $750,000 earmarked for the cost of our relocation during the construction. We're
Okay.
hoping not to use that much, but that's the number they have in there.
And that number's not included in this bond issuance?
It is.
It is.
It is, yeah, because
Okay.
it's part of that 5.8. Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it hasn't changed.
Correct.
Okay.
And so this budgeted, this number is increased only to provide a little bit of additional headroom in case the bond issuance is larger.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And this is not approving the bond issue. This is just certifying that you're going to be advancing costs, which you will then reimburse yourself from the bond issue when it occurs. So you're not establishing a $7.25 million bond.
Okay.
Yeah, just to affirm, Jeremy, before we get to the beginning and start and complete the financing, we've got to spend some money. And the standard practice is take it from your general fund and then reimburse yourself with the bond issuance and that debt structure for the project. So this is purely saying we spend $500,000, $1 million, whatever we spend, when we do complete the bond issuance,
We're able to reimburse.
we'll reimburse our general fund. That's all this is doing.
City, yeah.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-07.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. We have the next one, 15.3, consideration of resolution to declare an intent to reimburse for the Jackson Avenue area water and sewer project. Same concept. Any questions? Welcome your consideration.
Make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-08.
Second?
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Banking Services RFP. This is just an update. There is no action. And I'll call on Jen to address this topic.
Good evening again. There's not a whole lot to report. We did go through the RFP process. We had 2 respondents and interviewed them both. After reviewing the RFP responses and the interviews, we made the determination that it was best to stay with Truist. They would be able to help us with all of our needs throughout the city. And we did, as you know, hire a consultant to help us with the RFP. We have not yet received the final invoice on that cost, but I expect to receive it any day. It'll be an FY24 cost since the work was performed then. And I'll be sure to report to council what that number ended up being. Hopefully far less than the not to exceed 20,000.
I apologize. I'm sure you've told us this in past meetings, but are we required to do this periodically? Or were you just looking to make sure we were getting good rates?
We are. Our attorney pointed out to us that we hadn't done it in over 10 years.
Okay.
So it's best practice to go out and do it again.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jen. Look forward to the final analysis. Next item on our agenda is a closed session, and my expectation is there will be a discussion. And when we come out of closed session, the only business to conduct will be adjourning our meeting.
So we won't have the FOIA, any more FOIA discussion afterwards.
Well, you have that option. You're not just back from
Right, I
Europe
can
this
stamp
time.
later.
You raised the question. If council, would you like to continue our FOIA, or would you like to call it a night?
How much longer do you think it would be?
Depends on how many questions.
Yeah.
August 15th is
August
also
15th.
available.
August 15th.
Just for FOIA. In some ways, I feel like we might as well do it and.
I think we should finish.
Yeah.
Since we started it, we all have the PowerPoint presentation, then you don't have to print it a second time. Because I'll lose it on it. Of course, I should keep it for 9, 10, 15 years.
With that, I'll ask Ms. Alexander to read us in, and when we come out of closed session, we will continue our FOIA training and then have an adjournment. I don't anticipate there'll be any other actions.
I move that the city council of the city of Lexington convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 for the purpose of discussing and considering the disposition of publicly held real property at 626 Waddell Street and Spotswood Drive, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy. Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29 for the purpose of discussing and considering the award of an amended public contract with Urban Core Realty LLC and Echelon Resources Incorporated pertaining to 626 Waddell Street and Spotswood Drive, where the contract amendment will involve the expenditure of public funds and discussion in an open session would adversely affect the city's bargaining position or negotiating strategy and Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel retained by city council on specific legal matters requiring legal advice.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Sigler.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Aye.